We haven't been able to find a committed part-time code officer. We have to have somebody in that position that's either part-time and willing and able to do it part-time, or if we can't find a part-time person, we need to maybe step up our budget to a full-time. So what I've built in for code enforcement this year is about $75,000. So that's significantly higher than the 30,000, 25 to 30 that we budgeted in the past. And so that includes a salary and benefits for a code officer. It also includes mileage. It also includes setting aside about $6,000 for our contracted planner. Now, if we're able to find a code officer that's able to do the planning and do all those things, that would be great. But much like many other towns in Maine, we struggle to find a code officer.
Is this full-time person out there?
I'm not giving this to you with anybody in mind. We've been paying $18, $19 an hour, and most people just laugh. If they're even remotely qualified, they're not interested in doing it for that. What do you think a part-time 20-hour-a-week hourly wage should be?
The toughest part with part-time is most towns this size are looking for 20, 25 hours a week. And most people need a full-time job.
What is a full-time hourly wage, Dave?
I've seen it as low as 40 and I've seen it as high as 75.
Okay. So it's up to the experienced individual, what they think they're worth, is that what you're saying?
And what's expected of them.
Yeah, all right.
There's not a lot out there.
Do you think we could find someone?
I think if it was a full-time position, it'd be a lot easier. Like I said, someone's got to dedicate their week to, right now, 20 to 25 hours a week, which is difficult to live on.
When you have a rarity, then it becomes competition. So in this case, competition is money,
It is.
because that's how we lost the last one.
Right.
It came down to hours and money.
Absolutely. It's a lot like the police world, the EMS world, the fire world, is the next town home is gonna pay you more money.
Yeah.
They're gonna go, it's the same job.
Because they're a rare commodity.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes.
As you know, Amos Lishu has been performing code enforcement duties for us 2 days a week since September. He also took a job at the town of Winslow. So he started today, and he's doing 3 days a week in the town of Winslow. So he has committed to continue 2 days a week in Madison, 3 days a week in Winslow. But I'm not kidding myself. That Winslow job could turn into a full-time job, which means in this very difficult labor market, we could find ourselves looking again for a code officer. And it just goes to show how much demand there is, because we had 2 other municipalities ask if we could share this code officer before Winslow came in. So it's just the kind of the lay of the land out there as far as code officers. But so far he's doing a great job, and I hope we can keep him part-time.
What was the hiring process for the code enforcement officer, health officer?
So Jay Watt, as you know, Elwin Watt, Jay Watt is a highway employee, and so he's the foreman. He waited till after town meeting to make sure that the budgets were going to be passed as presented, so that the full-time position of code officer would be approved. And then he approached me, and we had a discussion, we had an interview, and I essentially offered him the position, knowing as much as about it.
Anyone else involved in the hiring process?
No, not on that, not in that particular case.
So now highway is down on the foreman.
That is correct.
Do you realize how difficult that's gonna be to replace?
I do realize how difficult that is. However, I did not recruit this individual, he came,
I
he came to me.
understand that. Is this money in the budget?
So this money will have to come from an approved carry forward. Now, again, the carry forward is up to the board, so you could choose not to do that, that would kind of put us in a pickle.
You don't have to go too far south for a truck driver to get $30 an hour and a $5,000 sign on the road. That's the competition.
You can't have your workers right on the hip pockets of the guy that's running the show. You gotta do something for that too.
We've taken it to the town, and this is what our budget is. Yeah, I don't think that's right for us or the townspeople to vote on a different budget altogether. And that money should have been in the budget for the town meeting, and it wasn't. That's what I'm concerned about.
I'm not gonna entertain a motion unless our road commissioner is implemented into this also.
Those in favor? Opposed? We have 4-1, and that motion carries. So,
If the board would entertain a motion to set the road commissioner's pay at $32 an hour starting August 1st, I would recommend that.
Is this code enforcement officer gonna be code enforcement all week?
Yep.
He doesn't have any other jobs or
Oh,
anything?
he's the facilities maintenance person too. So he handles everything that we used to dump on the highway department as far as playgrounds and repairs at Old Point, repairs in town, all the other things that we've talked about. So he's that's what we created in the budget that was passed at town meeting, was a code enforcement facilities maintenance full-time position with
This was
benefits.
in enforcement and maintenance man?
It was included in the general government budget, yes.
The one we voted on as a group?
We discussed it at the
Town
budget
meeting,
meetings. Right, we discussed it at the budget meetings, we discussed it with the budget advisory committee,
So,
and it went to town meeting.
then you knew that he was gonna get done?
No, I did not create a position with a person in mind. I created a position and recommended it to the board because we could not find a code officer.
Right.
And every time we hired one, they took a full-time job somewhere else. So I recommended to the board and the budget committee that we create a full-time position. I did not create that position with any person in mind.
I guess I didn't understand the whole situation here. It was surprising to me, and probably it's my fault that I didn't look deeper or check more or what have you, that we went from a part-time code enforcement officer, and then our intention was to hire a full-time code enforcement officer. But my question always, at that time was, we can only justify 2 or 3 days a week for a code enforcement officer. How are we gonna hire one for a whole week?
That's where the combining code officer with a facilities maintenance person, that was.
And what is this person's wages when he's doing handyman work?
The same as is when he's doing code officer work, $24 an hour.
So he came from highway, didn't lose a cent.
He didn't go backwards. He lost all his overtime.
Yeah, but he didn't lose a cent of money,
That's correct.
but left the highway hanging. I'm sorry, Tim, I don't like it.
There's coordinate with highway for this, for that, and everything else, and he needs to stay out of that town garage. He no longer has, it's in the drug pool, he ought to turn his keys in. There's been enough hate and discontent from that anyway. That needs to be cut out, because all he'd be doing is standing there at $24 an hour watching highway do the work, because it takes the equipment and it takes more than one person. So that needs to be taken right out if he's gonna stay here. I think we ought to get rid of the maintenance portion of it anyway.
somebody going to another job, I don't know why we're getting all upset with that. I don't really get, people can change jobs.
this maintenance job, when did we decide this?
I presented it to you as a board, as we were discussing the budget. I presented it to you during the budget advisory meetings. I had presented it to you to do it in phases where we would set the budget, and then any money we had left over in general government, we would carry forward to fulfill that full-time position. Because I didn't know how long it was gonna take me to fill that full-time position.
Okay.
When the budget was passed at town meeting, I did not have anyone in mind. We had Amos Mishu, who was gonna stay till the end of June. He has taken a job, he took a job in April with the town of Winslow, full-time, no experience other than us. Full-time, $25 an hour right out the gate. That's the market out there for code officers. So I budgeted $25 an hour looking for somebody. And so I presented it. I presented it on multiple occasions.
I claim guilt myself because I didn't understand it, and if I didn't, I should have asked more questions, all right? That's my fault, right there. But I just don't think that we need to pay a maintenance man $24 an hour. That's all. Other than that, I understand what you did, and I understand that as far as I'm concerned, I dropped the ball, and now I'm bitching about it. I couldn't replace flushes anymore. I couldn't do drywall work anymore. That's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
At $33 an hour.
But wouldn't it have been just as cheap just to hire a plumber to come in and fix the plumbing?
Not for $24 an hour.
I mean,
All of this. We did talk about this. We all approved this. I completely understood what he was talking about. I don't know why it's so confusing now.
When I presented the budget to the board and the advisory committee for a full-time code officer, I increased that total line from 65,000 up to 75,000. But when I came back to the budget committee and the board to go with the budget, I had reduced it, saying that we can, if we do hire someone full-time, we should have enough money left over to carry forward enough to fill that budget. So the budget that was passed for code enforcement is only $52,000, which is total. That $25,000 will bring that up to about $77,000, which will cover all the expenses of a code officer, and there's also $7,000 in there to pay for a contracted planner through KV Cog. So all that money in the budget doesn't go to the code officer. Some of it goes to a contracted planner. But what I explained to the board and to the budget committee at the time of the budget was to save the taxpayers' money now, knowing that we're not gonna spend that code office budget in this year because we didn't have a full-time code officer. We would lower the amount to take to the taxpayers at town meeting and fund the rest of it with carry forward. So that's what I'm proposing.
All those in favor? All vote in favor. Opposed? All right, so we have to go back. Mr. Moody, we want to take these individually? Public Works?
that would be good.
So I don't really understand what the problem is.
I'm still a little upset about the code enforcement when it wasn't told that it was gonna be split into different jobs.
I remember it being explained that way. But I think we have good people in place, and I think we need to take care of them and make sure we keep them there.
In the warrant that we took to town meeting, you specifically see that we had a line there for code enforcement, not code enforcement, maintenance. And that's what the town voted on, code enforcement. So I don't think we can create that second position and add it to it. I don't think we can do it because we didn't do it at town meeting.
I think we went over that in our budget formula, the formation of the budget, and we talked about that, having that person do a secondary thing in order to make a full-time job.
See, I don't remember that.
So if we make it just a code enforcement officer,
Yeah, what are you gonna do with him the rest of the time?
I mean, I think,
How are you gonna keep him there for five days in a row, week after week, and keep him busy?
I think we probably could, but
No other code enforcement officer has been able to.
because we haven't hired them on that basis.
We talked about this last meeting, I recall that when we did talk about it, it was the maintenance piece that we wanted to have so that jobs like this building being refurbished weren't, the work wasn't being done by our town manager in his spare time, which he has none. My understanding, and I feel, hopefully you agree with me, that was clearly stated when we talked about this, that that's what we were hoping to do. Tim can't be doing all these maintenance projects. He shouldn't be doing all these maintenance projects. The town should be paying someone to do those. And that position, I totally understand when Tim explained it, was to use for code enforcement. And the other thing is too, that code enforcement is not what it used to be. I don't know about Bob Dunphy because I wasn't here back then, but code enforcement is a lot different today. It has to be, you have to take courses, you have to understand the building codes. There's lots and lots and lots more stuff that's being done today than there were back then. So, you know, I'm perfectly comfortable with what we decided. I don't understand why the rest of us aren't, and it makes all the sense in the world to me. Tim should not be doing those projects.
As soon as he got a full-time job, he was gone. So we're begging these guys to come out and do this stuff. Where are we gonna find this person that's going to do this part-time? I just don't know where we're gonna get these people that we expect to work part-time. They aren't there.
Now we have a code enforcement officer that we're gonna pay to go to school and take tests.
Mr. Moody, if you ask me for a job description for both, I'll get it to you, because there is one. Mr. Mantor read from it at the last meeting. So there is a job description for a code officer / facilities maintenance person.
Okay.
Susan Hathaway, when we hired her on Bob Dunphy's recommendation, she was not certified. We paid her to get certified, and she did in that first year. I was building money into it so that we could hire Amos full-time this year, but we couldn't do it because Winslow offered him a full-time job starting in April at $25 an hour. And so I said, okay, we're not gonna spend all this budget. So in order to save the taxpayers' money, I'm gonna build a code enforcement budget that is gonna rely on carrying forward what we didn't spend. I don't think it's any secret that my decision, and it's completely mine, my decision to hire the Public Works foreman when he came to me and applied for the job, it is clear that my decision you disagree with. And I understand that. But it's still my decision. I'm authorized to hire and fire. I made a mistake. I should have brought the road commissioner into this process before I made my final decision. And for that I am sorry, and for that I know that I made the mistake of doing it. But if what you're trying to do is to try to make an adjustment based on your disapproval of my decision, the fact of the matter is we've offered a person a position. And I explained to this board and the advisory board, could I have made it clearer at town meeting? Sure. I could have put right on that town meeting warrant, code enforcement, maintenance facilities. And if somebody saw that and asked a question, we could have discussed it there. I'm sorry, I didn't do that. But right now is where we're at. And I'd like to know from this board how you want me to move forward. Right?
The town voted on a code enforcement officer, period. There was no / maintenance. That's where I have a problem, Tim.
Cut the maintenance off it and have, for this year, have a code enforcement officer.
We've never done that before. I was hoping to do that with Amos, but he left before I could do that.
Yes, I don't have a problem with the person you have there. And I don't think Ron does either.
He's doing handyman work. So he came from highway and didn't lose a cent. He didn't lose a cent of money,
That's correct.
but left the highway hanging.
And we don't have enough buildings for a maintenance person either. I mean, I assume he's gonna do repairs in the buildings, in this room, and Go Lab's gonna do something with this room, so
Some things there that can be done to make it through a year anyways. I don't know after that what we do, but, I mean, we can come back next year and try to do it, but I think it was pretty clear. Whether that says code enforcement / maintenance man, it doesn't. I'll concede that, but I think as a group, we knew what we were doing.
Do you think it will really make any difference to the town, what you call it? Whether you call it code enforcement officer and assign extra duties for him to enable to keep that full-time job, or code enforcement officer / maintenance man? Is that really going to make a difference? We have our primary duties, but we cover other things. We have to do that because of lack of staff. So in this case, you have lack of work for a code enforcement officer, which we desperately need, and you can't find a half-time person to do it.
Any other questions? I would hope we'd support this, because I think we need to move forward with it.
And to answer your question, Mary, or to make a comment to your question, when that person left the highway department up there, it left quite a void. There's not a lot getting done in this town right now on our roads, which is our prime time to get work done in this town that is not getting done now, in lieu of some paving projects that are coming up in the next couple of weeks, and it's not going to get done.
If we're gonna come to town meeting anyway, the special town meeting, and you'd like it voted on there, what about creating a 4th article for that?
Can we do that?
You can add one, yeah.
Is that an interest of people? I mean,
The intention for a code enforcement officer is to grow into the position where they can be the expert to the planning board. After we had some issues where we were falling down with the planning board, asked me to get involved. And I had been involved with the planning board, doing their agendas, taking their minutes, preparing their packets, attending their meetings, and acting as kind of that expert liaison in, the fact that we don't have a full-time code officer. Our full-time code officer will step into that role pretty quickly. So I've always tried to keep work from being assigned to the highway department. In previous administrations, there was this assumption that highway had the time and the manpower to do a lot of things that the select board asked them to. I'll use the ice rink as an example. It was assumed by the select board that the highway department could build that ice rink. So I came in with my truck and my trailer, and I took 4 loads down Ash Street to clear out that area so they could build the playground. And after the first few pieces went in, the Fortin family said, we'd like some more pieces, and they gave more money for that. And so I did it myself, whatever I was making per hour. We need a maintenance person to do maintenance at our 2 playgrounds where people play, and I don't want anybody to get hurt. We need a maintenance person to install new windows at the town office and to work with Bob's Cash Fuel to put in new heating units. We need a maintenance person over at the East Madison Fire Department. That building is not in very good shape. It is not very energy efficient. We need a maintenance person. Mr. Vinziano last year asked that we start a process of looking at all the capital things we need to do. We need a maintenance person to do that. That is why I built this budget this way.
I'm gonna ask for us to vote. I hope we support this, because I think we need this to happen. And, all right, all those in favor? All right, opposed? All right, motion is denied. All right, so I guess we gotta talk about where we're gonna go with this personnel. I mean, what do we do at this point? Any suggestions from the board?
Yeah.
Yes.
I kind of like Randy's idea that we add a motion, article to that town meeting, if that's the only way we're gonna get this done. so that we can change it, so that the town understands that it's maintenance and code enforcement.
Can we
If they
do that?
approve it, then, and then they approve it, what's that?
Frankly, the other option is that I continue with the commitment that I've made to this individual for a full-time job for this year, and we just overrun this account. That's what will happen. And hopefully we'll save enough money in other areas of general government to be able to not have an override when we get to next year's budget.
Right, and this gentleman's right, if you took it to the special town meeting, they already approved the code enforcement officer. You just gotta let them approve the maintenance person, and basically it's all the same pay. The town gave you $52,750.
You could add an Article 4 that would allow the town to create the position of code enforcement maintenance person
For 25,000.
and authorize the select board to carry forward the 25,000.
Would the board go along with that? Moody?
I would rather see it two separate entities, Tim, not slash.
So you want
You
two,
got a
you want
code
to fill,
enforcement, and you got a maintenance
you
man.
want to fill 2 part-time positions then?
That's the way I would look at it. I'm not comfortable with the slash.
Why?
Let him do
What-
both, let him do both jobs.
But pay him part-time and different wages for each job?
Yes. What's wrong with that?
It's difficult to find somebody that's willing to work for that. If you were to hire a contractor to come in and put some windows in for you, what do you think their hourly rate's gonna be?
Well, I don't know about that, Tim. Like I said, the only point that I have here is the way it went to town meeting,
Okay.
all right? That's the only point. The only thing that went to town meeting was a code enforcement officer. All of a sudden, we have got something that the town meeting did not vote on.
Okay.
I'm uncomfortable with that. How do I answer a citizen out here when he asks me that question? How come we got this when you brought it to town meeting and it wasn't there? How do I answer that? That's my only concern.
The question is, part of that article we voted on included 14,000 for health insurance. Do you give full-time benefits to part-time workers?
That's true.
Right now, the code officer is hired in a full-time position with benefits. If we were to split those and create a 20-hour-a-week code officer and a 20-hour-a-week position, then you'd have 2 part-time positions. Even if the same person did them, I don't think they'd be eligible
They
for
wouldn't be eligible
health
because they're.
insurance.
I don't think you're gonna get 2 part-time people.
We haven't so far, so I don't know why all of a sudden we think we're going to. Is the board going to support taking it to town meeting? Mr. Moody?
That's the only way you're gonna get it clarified.
Okay, so we'll look for a motion to add Article 4 to the special town meeting warrant for August 29th.
See if the board will be authorized to fund a full-time position for code enforcement facilities maintenance, utilizing $25,000 of carry forward from general government.
Okay. All right, can somebody make that a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second? I'll second it so we can talk about it. All right, all those in favor of going to the town meeting? All in favor? Opposed? Looks like that's dead. All right, a motion and a second to go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter pursuant to 1 MRS 4056A code enforcement. All those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
Had a lot of time reviewing old permits, trying to bring them up to date and get them signed off on. The last 8 weeks, we've had 11 new building permits. It's 34 for the year, which is about average from where we were last year. This year, it's a little different. 11 of these out of the 34 are brand new homes that are coming to this town that have never been on a lot, you know, so hopefully that's good news, get some money for the tax basis. A new home requires about 10 inspections from start to finish. 14 new plumbing permits in the last 8 weeks, 31 for the year. Plumbing permits are anywhere from 2 to 4 inspections. Some shoreline zoning, tree removal permits out to the lake. 6 property violation health calls.
For the last 54 months prior to June, we had been without a code officer for 28 of those months. I've had conversations with every member of the board individually here about this. On a couple of occasions, people refer back to Bobby Dunphy, who did a great job for us and got done in 2017. But since that time, we have not been able to maintain a code officer. The 2 that we have hired during that time have both left us to go to full-time jobs. I've taken 75% of the calls. I think that's light, but that's a good average of what I've done over the last 5 years, is taking those code officer calls and try to field them out to a committee of Leo Mayo and Dave Savage and other folks that have been able to help us, but it's not the same as having your own code officer.
Can either of you please explain why, when you had the opportunity to take this matter to the special town meeting with the Weston Avenue project, neither of you voted yes or no, and neither of you sustained to vote?
In hiring a code enforcement officer full-time, which cannot keep him busy, just doing code enforcement, it's gonna cost this town $75,000 for pay and benefits. I don't think it's fair to the other town employees that a part-time maintenance person be paid $25 an hour when only some of the operators up to the highway garage are making that much money. I don't think it's fair to those people.
So all of the work that needs to be done on the town-owned properties and the maintenance on the playgrounds,
Yep.
can you contract that out for less than $25,000 a year?
I don't know, I haven't tried, I don't know. I don't know, but
Mr.
one thing
McKinney,
about
you're
it,
a
once these
contractor.
items are taken care of, then what?
I don't know if I agree with you. We've never tried a full-time code enforcement officer. So we've said it over and over again that we don't have enough to keep somebody busy. I'm not going to agree with you on that point, because I think that we have to figure that out, and I think that's what the plan was for this year, is to figure that out. If we have enough time for somebody to do that job, we don't know that.
Is part of the code enforcement officer's job to enforce the property maintenance and that type of stuff?
Yes.
If it's the case, then I can tell you, you need way more code enforcement time. Because I can leave here right now, and in 5 minutes, I can point out 10 properties that are in violation of the property maintenance ordinance. And clearly, they don't have time right now to do it on a part-time basis. So I would say, in a pre-Mubeck era, perhaps we didn't have enough. But Mubeck has just really changed the dynamic. Plus, we added, when I was on board, we added this property maintenance thing, which became part of the code enforcement piece. So I would agree with Selectman Benziano on that.
The question is like, I thought this was discussed during the budget season, wasn't it kind of, if I knew about it, the joke in the town office was, we were the last to know. But I feel like if I knew about it, then it had to be already discussed, because I felt like we were looking for a full-time code enforcement officer, because we wasn't able to keep one.
You can't contract anything up for $25 an hour, no matter what you do. So, I mean, in that aspect, that's a cheap rate.
Sounds to me like you're gonna be very busy. And I'm completely in support of this. I don't understand why we can't agree on this. But I think the results are gonna show that he's going to become busy. I will reiterate myself again, Tim should not be doing all of this maintenance that he's been doing and trying to be a town manager as well. That affects his effectiveness. And we need to stop
I think
doing that.
job evaluation, we told him not to get too much on his plate. So I think that's something to take off his plate, in my opinion.
When Bobby Dunphy was here, he was only part-time and he didn't have enough time to do all of the stuff that he needed to do with the hours that he had.
Call for a vote. All those in favor? 2? Opposed? We have 3. The motion is denied.
Why are they opposed?
All right, we,
Mr. Chairman, it is the right of the taxpayer to poll the board.
We need to have a full-time code enforcement officer because the rules have changed over the last few years. And it's a full-time job. And this town has some really wonderful things going on. And we need to take care of it. And you guys, you voters, need to approve this too because we need to give this. We should support this and we should support it now. And frankly, I don't understand why they aren't supporting it. It doesn't make sense. So.
If you wanted a code enforcement officer full-time and you wanted a maintenance guy full-time with that position, you put in $52,000. And that's what the townspeople voted on at the meeting, and that's what they got.
and I think as Mr. Duchamp said, we got property maintenance issues that have to be addressed. We have all of these permit here that need to be addressed, and we need to move the town forward, and we're not moving it forward in this vote.
I don't believe we need to pay $25 an hour for a janitor or somebody to rake leaves. A lot of this stuff, you have point person, is that a person standing around watching somebody else do the work? I know his mileage will be too much to justify, and it's on and on it goes. He has no budget to do much of this work with unless it comes out of your budget.
If we had taken to town meeting, code enforcement officer / maintenance man, I wouldn't even be here arguing with you or going against some of these things. But it wasn't taken to town meeting that way. Am I splitting hairs? Maybe so. But I don't want somebody asking me, why did you do this when we didn't vote on it at town meeting? I'm just listening to the people.
It's my understanding that this board is okay with retaining him full-time as long as I find the money elsewhere within the confines of the current budget.
I am.
I am as well.
So if I can find enough savings there, is the board in favor of me keeping a full-time code officer?
Every single year we've carried forward money. Other entities spend it in the spring, and they don't have that carry forward. So what we're doing is taking money that wasn't spent out of general government, out of fire, out of highway, and bringing it forward into the next year. It's just a process. I mean, it's the way it's done.
Can we retain this full-time code officer if I can find it within the general government budget to pay for it?
I said yes.
And I said yes.
Mr. Moody.
How are you asking this, Tim? You're saying code enforcement. You ain't saying, now you're not mentioning maintenance person. How do you mean this?
Mr. Moody, when I created this position and I put it in the budget, I was very clear that it was a code enforcement position full-time, and other duties would be much of the maintenance that I have done in the past and not done a great job at. So what I'm asking you right now is if I can find the money in other parts of the general government budget, I will fund this full-time position, which will be a code officer and a person that will take care of many of these maintenance items that need to be done.
Are you saying that when we go to town meeting next year, you're gonna put this in town meeting as a code enforcement / maintenance?
Sure. I'll word it that way, and you betcha I won't hold back any money.
And
It'll be all in the budget.
On top of that, are you going to keep us appraised of where this money's coming from?
Certainly. Had too many times in this last 6 months where we've made what I thought were clear decisions only to come back and people didn't understand or people didn't remember. So I would like a vote, a motion and a second that says that you've authorized me to find the money within the general government budget to fund this full-time position.
All right, looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it. All right, any other questions on what is being asked?
Yeah.
Mr. Moody.
What is the difference between this motion and the one we just put down?
$25,000.
That's it.
That's the difference.
But you're.
And like you just pointed out, Mr.
You're
Moody,
asking us for a motion to have a code enforcement maintenance person. You're asking for a motion, which we have said no.
well, you didn't carry forward the money.
You asked to carry.
That's a different subject as far as I'm concerned. I'm not gonna sit here and vote against something that I just voted against.
But you just voted against carrying forward the money. What I'm asking is, can we keep this position that I offered to this person in good faith? Can we keep that position full-time if I can find the money in the budget?
Are we negotiating now?
I'm not sure. What do you mean?
You want our votes? You want to change our votes? We voted on this thing, this was the third time I think we voted on this already this year.
But every time that I've asked you why you voted, you always said it was your principle against carry forward.
Right.
So now I'm asking you not to carry it forward. Now I'm asking you to say that you would agree with what you just said, that I can find the money in the general government budget.
Right, now, and then did I ask you about the 25,000, if you could get that out of your budget?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, this is why we need line budgeting, not just a couple pages. We need to have individual line pages like we did past.
All right, how many are in favor?
Wait a minute, I'm
Oh,
not
I'm
done.
sorry, Mr. Moody.
I'm not done with questions here. We're right back to a full-time code enforcement officer. Everybody seems to be in agreement with that. Okay, everybody. It's the maintenance person. Now, we just voted to have it, for the code enforcement. But the thing is here is not the maintenance person. Now you want us to vote for you to give you money to pay a maintenance person who we don't want.
No, you're not giving me any money. I'm
Allowing you, all right.
I'm finding it, that's in the existing budget.
Yeah. And we're right back to the maintenance person again.
Would it be better if I just said a full-time code officer and other duties as assigned?
We're just rewording it.
And your role is to oversee the budget. That's your role as a board. My role is to carry out the personnel, carry out the job descriptions, carry out the hiring and discipline and firing. That's what you hired me for. So I created a job description for this position, and I put in maintenance items, because in previous conversations, when Dave Savage was on this board, Dave had come to me privately and said, you know, you need to find a full-time person that can do code enforcement and X, Y, Z. So that's kind of what got my wheels spinning, that this would be a good opportunity to find somebody that could do the code enforcement and other duties. And so what I'm asking you to do is to work with me. Allow me to be able to maintain this position within the confines of the budget that we have right now.
Who's gonna do the stuff that's on this piece of paper here? What are we gonna do with all this that needs to be done? And looks like we've got some problems that have been around for a while. And Tim isn't gonna have time to get that done.
I don't disagree with you. But when that list of duties is done, what then? For another 8 or 10 months, you're gonna have to keep coming up with this, or there is nothing there for that person?
The list is ongoing, right? The list is always added to. I mean, this list is not shortened up since I've been on here with the property maintenance. I mean, the list keeps building and building and building. We get calls all the time about this property or that property isn't living up to it, so.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Al. My point is, it did not go to town meeting that way.
Right, so.
You want to bring it up next year, fine and dandy, and whatever they say, I'm for it.
Within the money that is available at this point in the budget, are we willing to give the town manager authority to keep the code enforcement person going?
That ain't what you're asking.
I'm asking.
If we say yes to that,
Yep.
you're keeping the code enforcement and maintenance man going.
You're keeping a full-time code officer,
Yep.
period. Period.
Yep. Then what are you gonna do about these list of,
I'm going to assign them, which is my job.
yeah,
I'm going to assign them to people that I know can get it done. You've got I'm asking for a full-time code officer, period.
If you turn this down, you lose a full-time code enforcement officer, so you went from having someone to no one, and you have all these people that are building. How are you gonna answer to the citizens when their properties are brought to a screeching halt because they have no one to do their inspections, and their contractors can't move forward without the inspections?
But in the past, that's happened before. We've talked to Anson, we've talked to these people. There's very many people that want to share, Chris. I mean, there isn't very many that want to.
I'm looking at the code enforcement list here, 11 building permits, and a total of 34 for this year. So we've got 11 new homes, people investing in this town. There's gonna have to be several inspections, I believe, 10, right? 10 inspections on each one of those 11 homes. Plumbing permits. As far as a full-time code enforcement officer, I think we can do this. And quibbling about the maintenance, which is definitely important, but you guys, we've got to do this. If we don't do this, Mr. Watt will walk down the road and get a job somewhere else, most likely, or continue his code enforcement training and go get it, because there are lots of openings for code enforcement. And, you know, we need this now. We can't. I agree that maybe the way it was handled maybe wasn't exactly correct, but we've admitted that, and we know that, and we have gone over this and over this and over this, and this is really, really silly that we're holding our town back because of a technicality that can easily be fixed, as Mr. Moody said at the next town meeting, whatever. But in the meantime, we need this position filled, and we need it filled now.
I have already seen this year, as I've been roofing, that after COVID's gone through, the numbers of contractors trying to start their own thing who don't know what they're doing and can need a code enforcement officer has been skyrocketing, not just here but in other places. Even just roofing, I'm seeing that this is something that is really needed. And I'm just on the side seeing it over and over and over and over.
All right, I agree with Mr. Roy. We got to move on, and I encourage someone to vote yes. All those in favor? Opposed? All right, it is denied.
Okay, after much thought over the last 2 or 3 meetings and hearing some negative feedback from the community, I feel we need to consider how we as a board are perceived in this community. Our job, I feel, and I hope this is correct, our job is to keep Madison on a sustainable path into the future. That being said, we have some really positive things happening here in town, such as Timber HP Go Labs, a proposed new apartment complex on Weston Avenue. Several new home construction projects that were brought to our attention last week from Jay. ATV trails are coming into town, Weston Woods and Waters trails. We have the beautiful Kennebec River running through our town. We have many, many successful businesses located in town, both here and in East Madison. I would like to think that with the new investment in town, more will follow. We need to welcome this investment and be able to meet the needs required to get the work done. Without a COE, code enforcement officer, much of the construction work will be slowed. Many unattended buildings will fall further into disrepair, and the list goes on. Without someone to be able to stay on top of this, we risk losing investment in town. I feel we have plenty of work for a full-time COE right now. When I was first elected, I felt excited to be part of this board and have enjoyed working with everyone. But I'm truly disappointed that we have not been able to come to an agreement on this subject. It was suggested we wait until next town meeting to rectify the situation. We should not wait. I trust we have read, well, those of you who are here who have read David Savage's email regarding this topic. I think it's a good explanation of what needs to be done, and I agree totally with it. We had a good candidate hired. He was happy at the prospect of being able to stay in Madison and work in Madison. Just wanted a change of job and something different. And he hit the ground running. And now, sadly, he has decided to leave the position due to our inability to come to a positive decision on this. I understand that some people feel that this was not handled as it should have been, and maybe that's the case. But we all agreed to fill this position, and now we are left without a code enforcement officer at a very critical time. This makes this board look like we do not know how to run things. Frankly, I'm embarrassed to have to sit here and watch this happen. I've said it before, and I will reiterate myself again tonight, and I'll do it again if I have to, many times. We need to look into the future and not backwards. We're all over 60, all of us here on this board, and times are changing. We cannot get on, if we cannot get on board and look to the future, then we will be left behind, and Madison will also be left behind. And I'm not sure if anything will come of this, but I feel that I have needed to say this for a while, and I feel that we're doing a really big disservice to the town of Madison by doing this and putting this out there the way we did it. And that's all I have to say.
I looked at it from the perspective of the workload, because it was stated at one of the meetings that I was at that there wasn't work enough for a full-time code enforcement officer. So having been on the advisory board when it was talked about, and having been on the board of selectmen when some of these rules were passed, I thought, well, maybe I can bring something to light.
I'm Mark Brody. I'm a resident of Madison. I'm the current president of the Lake West Runset Association, and I'm also a member of the Madison Planning Board. We're here tonight to follow up on the letter that we sent on October 5th, and we would like to add our voice to those others who have already spoken about the importance of a full-time CEO. Thanks for your question.
You're welcome.
I think that we all like the lake the way it is. The most important thing that we can do to keep it this way is to protect the water quality of the lake. And the CEO has a critical role in protecting water quality and health of Lake West Runset through enforcement of the shoreline zoning ordinance. The lake is an important economic resource for the town. If the water quality of the lake declines, property values and the tax base will also decline. Our request, please find a way now, would be great, to fund a full-time CEO.